Tonight, anger and heartache as the Bali bomb maker walks free early. Snow in summer and wild winds. Victoria's weird weather strikes again. Explosive new claims. David Warner declares war on Cricket Australia bosses. A new leader and new promises. John Pasuto takes over the Liberals after an election disaster. Airport baggage handlers sent packing as Melbourne Airport braces for a rush. And petrol falls to its lowest price in months, but not for long.
Live from Melbourne, 7 News with Peter Mitchell starts now.
Good evening. Australian survivors of the deadly Bali bombing's terror attack have been shocked by the early release of the chief bomb maker responsible for the deaths of more than 200 people. Umar Patek served just over half his sentence and claims he's reformed, but his victims don't believe it.
His final moments as a prisoner, a ceremony to mark his graduation from jail, complete with certificate. Red-bearded Umar Patek, known as the Demolition Man, Bali's master bomb maker. They even gave a fist pump to mark the moment and interviews. I feel grateful to Allah and the Indonesian government, he said, for granting me remission. The 2002 bombing killed over 200 people, 88 were Australian. The car bomb built by Patek, who was sentenced to 20 years but has served only 10. His Australian victims appalled.
If we're not outraged by that, what are we going to be outraged about?
Just imagine if we killed 202 Indonesians in Australia, what would happen over here?
I got a life sentence. He hasn't even served half of his.
Andrew Kasabi lost a leg. He's in disbelief.
No, I'm not satisfied with that. So I think I'm turning my views back to wanting the death penalty.
56-year-old Patek was granted both parole and 33 months off for good behaviour. Indonesia calls him a model prisoner. I'm committed to helping the government with its de-radicalisation program, he said. Peter Hughes, with burns to 50% of his body, doesn't believe a word of it.
I was in that courtroom 10 years ago. I saw that guy face to face. He could go back into the fold and start re-educating people to do exactly the same thing.
The Department of Foreign Affairs has repeatedly lobbied the Indonesian government about the impact that Patek's release will have on victims and Australia's memory of the Bali bombings. Now it's seeking assurances that he be kept under constant supervision and surveillance.
The Home Affairs Minister was recently in Indonesia.
I'm not going to explain the discussions I had, but I can just tell you that the Australian government has put in the strongest possible terms our views about what has occurred.
But the victims say the government's response was weak.
I'm so disappointed with our government's response this morning.
Our soft approach to Indonesia isn't on in terms of where I stand.
And the timing couldn't be more awkward for Indonesia. As Patek walked free yesterday, a suicide bomber walked into a West Java police station and blew himself up. 1 killed, 11 injured. He'd been recently released from prison on terror charges, just like Patek. Chris Reason, 7 News.
Victoria's weird weather has struck again with summer snow on the Alps and wild winds lashing the city. The unseasonal cold blast caused havoc in the suburbs, bringing down big trees onto cars.
A winter wonderland in December. A dusting of snow fell at Mount Donabuang, east of Melbourne this morning, blanketing trees and delighting visitors.
Wow, good job!
We're from Brisbane actually, so it's a bit of a shock to see it snowing.
Snowing when we got here. It's amazing.
And it was chilly in the city too, making for a less than pleasant morning commute. And it stayed low, hovering in the mid-teens. While it feels unseasonal, it's not that unusual to have a polar blast this side of Christmas.
They're a little bit rarer as we get into January and February, but yeah, December is definitely known for the old cold burst from time to time.
Wind gusts of up to 87 kilometres an hour caused chaos around the suburbs, taking out 2 cars and part of a roof on this Burwood street, leaving a big clean-up and hefty damage bill for unlucky drivers.
We just heard like this loud crashing sound
It's a new car and like the sunroof is completely smashed. It's all really damaged.
In Middle Park, unfavourable winds left this boat stranded on shore. Its name, Seriously. It's expected to warm up again on Saturday, but not for long. Another winter-like blast is already on the way. Temperatures could dip up to 12 degrees lower than the December average from Monday. In stark contrast to Queensland, sweltering through a heatwave this week, a summer Victorians can only imagine for now.
And Rochelle Brown joins us by the bay this evening. Rochelle, it was yet another busy period for the SES.
Mitch, the SES received 70 calls for help. 45 of those were for fallen trees, largely onto power lines, cars and some roads. Now, as you can see, those gusty conditions are sticking around in parts of Melbourne, but it's expected to be a nice and warm weekend. Even so, the SES are bracing for a busy December. Mitch?
Rochelle Brown at St Kilda, thank you. There's an explosive new twist in the Sandpaper Gate scandal, with allegations that Australian cricket executives told the team to cheat. The claim surfaced after David Warner declared war on the game's leadership.
As David Warner was preparing to head into the middle of the Adelaide Oval, his manager was delivering a bouncer. Speaking on radio, James Erskine said the Aussies were ordered to cheat by cricket bosses after a thumping loss to South Africa in 2016.
Warner said that we've got to reverse swing the ball, and the only way we can reverse swing the ball is basically by tampering with it. So they were told to do it.
Erskine hinting at more bombshells to come.
When the truth comes out, everyone's going to turn around and say, well, why was David Warner picked upon?
Cricket Australia tonight not responding to the explosive allegations.
The integrity of our great sport of cricket was in question, and nothing's changed since.
Erskine defending his client, who's knocked back a chance to ever lead his country again. Today, 3 steps behind his captain, but a lifetime away from the captaincy. Warner pulled out of a leadership review hearing into the Sandpaper Gate scandal after it was going to be made public, saying, "I am not prepared for my family to be the washing machine for cricket's dirty laundry."
It's not cricket's dirty laundry. It's David Warner's dirty laundry.
Warner's teammates tonight rallying around him.
He's keen just to move on, get on with playing cricket, and he's like he always is. He's awesome around the boys.
Cricket Australia remain tight-lipped on the issue of Warner's leadership today, and will be hoping that it doesn't overshadow what's happening on the pitch. Coincidentally, the marquee matchup of the summer is a series against South Africa, the first time the two nations have met in a test match since the whole saga began.
What remains at large is the basic truth around what happened on that test match.
Liam Tapper, 7 News.
Collingwood great Nathan Buckley's son has been seriously injured in a go-kart crash. Jet Buckley was on the racetrack when a brake line split and he was thrown down an embankment, the cart landing on top of him. The son of the Collingwood great revealed he has a broken collarbone, a lacerated kidney and liver. The 15-year-old has been racing go-karts for several years. John Pesutto has pulled off the ultimate political comeback, taking over as Liberal leader after he was re-elected to state parliament. He's promising a new style of opposition to resurrect the party after its election disaster.
4 years after voters turned against John Pesutto,
I might have been knocked down, but I know how to get up and fight my way back.
he's won his seat back and the top job.
We are united, we are energised by the challenge ahead.
A party room vote decided the Hawthorn MP's fate, choosing the former Shadow Attorney General over Berwick MP Brad Batten.
Let me assure you, I walk out of that party room today with my integrity in place. I will back John Pesutto 100%.
Then came veiled criticism of Deputy Leader David Southwick, who removed Liberal Party branding from his campaign signage.
Never take the Liberal logo off any of your signs. I don't care what electorate you're running. I'm a proud Liberal.
There is no question right across the country that the Liberal Party brand needs work. If we didn't think that, we've got our heads in the sand.
Mr Pesutto has promised to renew the party, bring more women on board and work constructively with the Premier.
Where agreement or bipartisanship is justified, I'll be the first to that to support the government.
I'd say to them, congratulations.
Twice failed leader Matthew Guy returned to Parliament for the first time since his disastrous election loss. Discussions about his future are ongoing.
Yes, the campaign could have been better, but I'm not going to, single anybody out. I think Matthew worked his guts out.
With the Liberal leadership decided, Mr Picciuto now has to choose his shadow cabinet, and that could include some of the party's newest MPs.
You will see them in the next few days taking on senior appointments.
Chanel Vella, 7 News.
2 baggage handlers have been sacked after they were filmed hurling luggage at Melbourne Airport. The pair was dismissed as the airport braces for its busiest Christmas period in years.
A rare glimpse at an airport under stress. Piles of luggage that have tumbled from conveyor belts in the international baggage handling area. Staff swamped ahead of a surge in summer holiday travel. It's an area at the centre of controversy after contractors were caught trashing luggage last week. An investigation found it was an isolated incident. The workers have been sacked.
And we do know that there's shortages. We're not where we want to be.
Almost 6 million travellers are expected to pass through Melbourne Airport by the end of January, up 150% from last summer. The busiest days will be the Thursday and Friday before Christmas and January 6. But cancelled and delayed flights remain a major headache.
It was really bad. My first flight was cancelled and then my second flight is delayed.
Really stressful. We're all keen to get home.
This is a behind-the-scenes look at what will be the most crucial part of airport operations in the coming months. Baggage handling is already short-staffed.
It's supply and demand, really. We have more demand than we have flights currently.
Sending prices soaring. A week before Christmas, the cheapest flight to Sydney is with Jetstar for close to $200. There are fewer flights at Avalon, but fares are cheaper. A trip to the Gold Coast will start at $215 with Virgin. A holiday to the West on December 18 will set you back a lot more, with flights starting close to $500. Cameron Bowe, 7 News.
The search for an Australian pilot has been called off following a deadly light plane crash in the US. Christian Kath, his wife Misty and daughter Lily were killed when their aircraft crashed off the Florida coast last weekend. Their youngest daughter was at a sleepover at the time and is now on her way back to Australia to live with her grandparents in Brisbane. A fundraising page has been set up for the family. Medibank will shut down its stores, IT systems and customer contact centres this weekend as it overhauls its online security. The move comes after Russian hackers stole personal information from millions of Australians.
The scene of Australia's biggest data heist, Medibank's virtual vaults looted by Russian crooks.
As a Medibank customer, I think it's absolutely disgraceful what's happened.
2 months since the breach, customers will suffer again. An unprecedented company shutdown starting 8:30 tomorrow night and continuing all weekend. Storefronts to be closed, websites offline, apps suspended, while foreign security experts from Microsoft run a repair and reboot operation.
It just shows how significant an overhaul their systems need and maybe even how poor they were to begin with.
And the insurer's not the only victim. New data from Australia's biggest cybersecurity firm has found that Medibank was just one of 16 Australian companies subject to an extortion-style attack last month.
The most we've seen in the last 18 months, and we've seen 12 separate cybercrime groups carry out those activities.
No sector is spared, from engineering to education, the finger pointing squarely at Russia, with at least one of last month's attacks from China.
We've genuinely now got the best minds on the problem.
From the Commonwealth, a new cyber security strategy with a 7-year plan to make Australia an unbreakable vault.
Hunting down people who would seek to do us harm and hacking back.
Tom Hartley, 7 News.
Energy ministers have agreed to a landmark plan to get more renewables into the energy market to avoid another power crisis. A deal will be finalised tomorrow to cap coal and gas prices and help struggling households.
On the way into the Energy Ministers' meeting, a surprise concession.
New South Wales is willing to forego any royalties. This is not about royalties, this is all about consumers.
Offering to give up $100 million in royalties to help fund a solution to skyrocketing power bills, a day before National Cabinet meets to consider price caps on coal and gas.
In some ways, this is a complex task, but in some ways it's very simple. We've got to protect Australian industry, we've got to protect Australian consumers.
The New South Wales government agrees, willing to take a hit to its coffers, but, like the Queensland government, wanting households protected.
If there are impacts on the taxpayers of New South Wales, there needs to be compensation. I've made that very clear.
A new report from the ACCC Consumer Watchdog today says 6 electricity retailers have gone to the wall since May, reducing competition, warning that coal and gas prices and power bills are likely to remain high until at least 2024. The Energy Ministers' meeting was looking beyond the current crisis, agreeing to a so-called capacity mechanism to encourage more electricity supply from renewables.
And what's the capacity mechanism? It's a keeping the lights on mechanism.
A mechanism that will now favour guaranteed electricity supply from renewable sources, redirecting subsidies away from fossil fuels.
Today I'm very pleased to announce that Coal Keeper is dead.
And now the leaders will tackle the problem of electricity bill creeper.
We're very close to landing a deal.
Everyone lending a hand to ensure the whole thing doesn't fall over. Mark Riley, 7 News.
Drivers are being urged to fill up now with petrol prices dropping across Melbourne. Cassie Zervos has the details, and Cassie, they won't stay at this level for long.
Women's prices have dropped close to 40 cents a litre since our last peak, but it won't last. Fuel is now the cheapest it's been since the middle of September. In the past 24 hours, oil prices have fallen to levels we haven't seen since Russia invaded Ukraine at the beginning of the year. So drivers can expect to fill up around $1.70 a litre. Diesel is higher than unleaded, starting at $2. The cheapest can be found at 2 Costco outlets in Epping and Moorabbin. Motoring experts say if you can hold off on filling up, it's best to wait another day because it is expected to drop even more. But a fuel price hike is imminent, Mitch, as the Christmas and New Year period is coming around.
Cassie Zervos at Albert Park, thank you. Another Australian fast bowler has been sidelined. Tim Watson, it's not just Pat Cummins with an injury concern.
Mitch, there were 2 forced changes for Australia. Coming up shortly, we'll get the latest from Adelaide as the Aussie top 6 make the most of some questionable West Indies tactics.
West Indies research, it just makes zero sense to me. It doesn't add up.
Plus, Hawthorn royalty passes a special tradition down to one of Sam Mitchell's rising stars. And Mitch, the AFL fixture is still under lock and key, but we've got exclusive details on a new marquee slot for a big Victorian club. All that and more soon.
OK, we'll see you then. Thank you, Tim. Another big council is ditching an Australia Day tradition and switching to a day of mourning. Next, the Mayor explains why. Also coming up, high emotion as tradies slug it out on a roof. A royal link to a violent plot to overthrow the German government. Later, water myths busted, the new advice on how much you really need to drink.
And there's warmer weather on the way. I'll show you when it'll arrive later in 7 News.
New figures reveal that drowning deaths are soaring in Victoria. 53 Victorians died in the last financial year, well above the 10-year average. Deaths in people over 65 doubled. Most were men.
In 4 out of 5 boating-related fatalities, the person was wearing an ill-fitting or incorrect life jacket or wasn't wearing a life jacket at all.
Most deaths took place on inland waterways. A third Melbourne council has voted to scrap citizenship ceremonies on Australia Day. Instead, Marybeck City Council will conduct a day of mourning.
Residents of Glenroy, Coburg and Brunswick will no longer be able to become Australian citizens on January 26th. Instead, they'll be invited to a day of mourning.
Our First Nations communities have been telling us that January 26th, it marks a day of mourning, a day of invasion and a day of survival. It marks the beginning of colonisation and dispossession.
Marybeck Council's First Nations Advisory Committee was behind the call for change.
We've got to avoid running public events like citizenship ceremonies that are tainted by Australia Day's history.
But not all First Nations leaders think it's a good idea.
Australia Day is the one day that we get the opportunity to talk to the general public and tell them stories, intrigue them about Aboriginality, intrigue them, not jump on them and go, hey, you white fellas have done it.
Last night's vote was evenly split between 10 councillors. The mayor had the casting vote. Marybeck Council holds up to 12 citizenship ceremonies a year, but this decision could change that. The federal government can now choose to revoke the council's authority to hold them.
Risking 12 citizenship ceremonies because we're trying to grandstand, I think it goes against what the residents of Moreland, Marybeck want us to do.
And the debate isn't over after one councillor moved a motion to overturn the decision. Emma O'Sullivan, 7 News.
A federal environmental watchdog is being set up to have greater oversight of development proposals and emissions standards. The body will also aim to preserve some of our dwindling native animal and plant species.
We have become the extinction capital of the globe in Australia. We are not doing well enough.
It's the largest overhaul of Australia's conservation efforts in 20 years. An aristocratic prince and a judge are among dozens of people arrested over a plot to overthrow the German government. Authorities say the far-right extremists were inspired by American conspiracy theorists and planned to storm Parliament.
Nighttime raids across Germany as 3,000 officers, including anti-terror police, swoop on a terror cell. 25 people arrested, including Heinrich XIII, Prince Royce, a 71-year-old member of one of Germany's former royal families, proposed to be the country's new leader under a planned coup. They were united by a hatred for democracy, the state and community, Germany's interior minister said.
This is not just an assault on democracy and a coup d'etat, but also like attacking the energy grid. This is pure terrorism.
The group, called Reichsbürger, or Citizens of the Reich, is accused of plotting a violent takeover of Germany's parliament, the Reichstag, and restoring the German Empire, inspired by the storming of the US Capitol. They'd already formed a shadow cabinet ready to seize power and had plans for a military, including former members of the German army. Among those arrested, a former far-right MP and current judge. A high-security operation across Germany taking down what authorities called a terrorist organisation. The German plotters are said to have been inspired by the same so-called deep state conspiracies that have driven the QAnon movement in the United States. One of the accused is believed to have reached out to Russia for help. A fringe armed group that is said to have as many as 21,000 sympathisers across Germany. In London, Hugh Whitfield, 7 News.
A wild brawl has erupted between two tradies working on a roof. The pair exchanged blows before one of the men fell 3 metres onto the concrete below.
You shouldn't be having a fight anywhere. You shouldn't be having a fight at work. It's pretty bad. Yeah, it's pretty unsafe, I must say.
The 44-year-old remains in hospital in a stable condition. A young driver's walked free over a crash that killed a grandmother. Why the judge ruled he suffered enough is next on 7 News. Also coming up, a frightening close call for a child in Melbourne's southeast. The shock move by China as it fights surging COVID case numbers. And after a rollercoaster year, what home buyers and sellers can expect in 2023. A child has narrowly avoided being hit by a car after running across a busy road in Melbourne's southeast, forcing the driver to swerve into another lane.
Their reading assessment, which can take
anywhere from 10 minutes to 25. Oh,
The driver was passing a childcare centre on Ferntree Gully Road in Oakley East. The child was crossing with an adult when she broke away and ran off, but she wasn't hurt. A young electrician has been spared jail time over a crash that killed a grandmother in Melbourne's southeast. A court heard the low-speed collision looked relatively minor, but turned fatal.
What looked like a minor crash had deadly consequences. 75-year-old Heather Tucker killed in tragic circumstances. Jasper Millen was driving his Hilux in November 2020 when the 20-year-old failed to give way on Station Street in Carrum. The apprentice Sparky was only travelling at around 19 kilometres per hour when he hit Mrs Tucker's sedan. The grandmother, who had a number of pre-existing health conditions, was critically injured. She died in hospital 2 days later.
The impact appeared to be relatively gentle to my observation, although it obviously was sufficient to cause multiple injuries to a victim whose state of health was most precarious.
A judge spared Mr Millen jail time because she accepted his lack of prior convictions and his genuine remorse. The court hearing, the young man wrote a letter of apology to Mrs Tucker's devastated family.
You are acutely aware of the pain and suffering that the death of Heather Tucker has caused.
Millen was handed a 2-year community corrections order. He's been disqualified from driving for 18 months. Estelle Grieping, 7 News.
China is rolling back its COVID restrictions in a stunning about-face. The government says it'll no longer lock down entire neighbourhoods or force every positive case into quarantine. People will also no longer have to show negative tests when travelling between regions. State media is softening the message on the severity of COVID. Time magazine has revealed its 2022 Person of the Year, honouring Volodymyr Zelensky and the spirit of Ukraine.
Person of the Year into the Time cover magazine is probably the biggest recognition any global leader can get.
The magazine's editor says it's the most clear-cut choice in memory. Property prices in Melbourne have fallen at their fastest rate on record. Domain's end-of-year report also reveals the suburbs which were most in demand.
It's been a rollercoaster year for the property market. Prices in Melbourne surged a massive 24% early on, but ended the year with the fastest fall on record, plunging 6%.
When we saw the RBA go through their most aggressive rate hike since the early 90s, it really did impact buyer sentiment and obviously borrowing capacity.
According to Domain's latest report, prices around Australia are 4.9% lower than the peak in March.
But they still remain almost $150,000 higher than they were before the pandemic property boom.
Suburbs where houses spent the shortest time on the market include Gladstone Park, Ferny Creek, Officer South and the Patch. Also popular suburbs with the highest clearance rates were Burwood East, Mornington, the Basin, Atwood and Capel Sound. For people overseas, Melbourne was the most searched for city in Australia, suggesting we could be in for a migration boost in 2023.
Initially, that's going to be felt on the rental market because most overseas migrants rent upon arrival, and then eventually it will impact the sales market.
Property analysts expect the market to stabilise over the next 12 months, saying prices could start rising again in the second half of next year, and interest rates could also be nearing their peak.
The thoughts are around that 4% mark, and why I do feel that may start to be a sweet spot is that we still haven't seen huge fall-offs in inflation.
Christy Cooper, 7 News.
Scientists have discovered some vegetables could be used as future cancer treatments. According to a Polish study, chemicals in potatoes have the ability to stop cancer-producing carcinogens from entering the body. The humble eggplant has also shown promise in stopping liver cancer cells from reproducing. Parcel delivery scams are on the rise, targeting Christmas shoppers. The ways to spot a fraud message is ahead on 7 News. Also, justice on a deadly King Street stabbing. the shocking number of Victorians who have cancer but don't know it. And after sport, the new advice on how much water we should be drinking. 3 homeless people have been found guilty of the stabbing murder of a man in the city. A Supreme Court jury agreed Benjamin McCartan, Candice Harper and Jamie Holt murdered Ricky Rowlands during a fight in October 2020. The 46-year-old was stabbed 3 times in the stomach and died the next day in hospital. 2 others were found not guilty of manslaughter. Almost 4,000 Victorians may have cancer and not even know it, according to shock new data. Diagnosis of cancer dropped by 4.3% last year. That came on top of a 7% fall in 2020. The Cancer Registry says many Victorians skipped critical screenings during the pandemic. The Australian share market was seeing red for another day this week. Network Finance editor Gemma Acton explains.
Thanks, Peter. Another dismal day for Aussie investors, with the ASX 200 shedding 54 points to close at 7,176. Energy companies were the biggest drag, while travel stocks were also pummeled. The Aussie dollar is still trading in a very tight range, around 67 US cents, while the oil price continues to retreat. A year ago, only a handful of Melbourne and Sydney city workers were heading into the office, while at least 3 in every 5 Brisbane, Adelaide and Perth city workers were making the commute. Today, there has been a sharp recovery in Sydney and Melbourne office occupancy, but virtually no change elsewhere. Peter.
Thank you, Gemma. Targeted health warnings on bottles of alcohol could help us drink less, according to UK research. A study found labels linking excessive alcohol consumption to heart failure and bleeding on the brain could discourage binge drinking. Labels with pictures were particularly effective, similar to the ones found on cigarette packets. The busiest time of the year for parcel deliveries is also a busy time for scammers targeting unsuspecting Christmas shoppers. Federal police have issued an urgent warning and tips on how to spot the fake messages.
Everybody loves Christmas, including online scammers targeting Aussies.
At Christmas time, it's an incredibly busy time for Australians, and it's also a busy time for cyber criminals.
And if you're expecting packages, look out for texts like this one telling you your delivery is delayed, but do not click on the link.
Because clicking on links could result in the provision of financial data and also the downloading of harmful malware.
Scammers have many devious means to get your money this festive season. Fake charities will tug at your heart and purse strings.
Pretending to be real ones, pretending to help the most vulnerable, but really just lining their pockets.
And hurting the charity's chances of getting much needed real donations.
The problem with charitable scams is that they don't just hurt the individuals, they hurt the reputation of the charitable sector.
Another big one is the hi mum or dad texts. Jen Arishu got burnt badly thinking her son needed help.
Do you know what? I'm not very happy with myself.
The text told her he'd broken his phone and had a new number. He needed her to pay urgent bills, which, like any good mum, she did.
I'm one of the how many? Millions and millions.
To avoid being scammed this Christmas, here are the government's top tips. Never open suspicious emails. Just delete them. Do not click on links in texts or emails. Look for grammar or spelling mistakes. Never give credit card or bank details away, and report anything suspicious to ScamWatch. And keep your cash for splurging on loved ones this Christmas. Steve Hart, 7 News.
Sport is next with Tim Watson. And Tim, there are more injury concerns for Australia's Test team.
There are, Mitch. Another Aussie fast bowler is battling to be fit for Boxing Day. We'll have the latest next as David Warner has plenty of time to mull over an explosive 24 hours in Aussie cricket. Plus the Big Bash change designed to rejuvenate an ageing Aussie star. Also, lethal returns to Hawthorn as we reveal exclusive fixture details for a big Victorian club and the Qatar cat who found himself offside. Welcome back. One of the most dominant T20 openers of all time could be set for a move down the order for this year's Big Bash. The Melbourne Renegades are weighing up a new role for Aaron Finch.
You know, there's an opportunity maybe we could bat him in the middle and play against spin, but we haven't made that final decision yet. If we can rejuvenate him batting him at 4 or 5, that could be a go.
Overseas import Andre Russell is expected to take his place for the Renegades' opening game against the Brisbane Heat in Cairns on Thursday. Josh Hazlewood is in doubt for the rest of the Test summer, with Cricket Australia revealing the fast bowler has suffered a low-range left side strain. He was replaced by Michael Nessa as Steve Smith won the toss today. Australia 2 for 125 as the West Indies tactics came under fire.
Changes and controversy. Michael Nessa and Scott Boland in for the injured Josh Hazlewood and Pat Cummins. The coin face up for stand-in skipper Steve Smith.
We're going to have a bat.
Cue the Dave Warner leadership debacle, abandoning his bid for a lifetime captaincy ban to be lifted for Sandpapergate. Warner blasted Cricket Australia last night in an 800-word statement. Today, the opener's bat started talking.
Width on offer. Warner jumping all over it for 4.
Top scorer in pink ball tests.
What a shot that is.
Boasting 700 plus runs, something special beckoned, but on 21 that bat was silenced.
Oh, can you believe it?
Plenty on that mind. Carefree. A cool as Usman Khawaja clocking over 1,000 runs for the calendar year. A 19th half-century, more bowling woes for the Windies. On debut, Markino Mindley went for scans on an injured hamstring. After the dinner break, Khawaja threatened to devour a depleted attack. Marnus Labuschagne...
Well, there is the width and there is the shot from Labuschagne.
Poised to pick up from his double hundred and century in Perth, Khawaja trapped in front for 62. Andrew McKinlay, 7 News.
And 7 News can reveal one of the marquee fixtures of the AFL's new Gather Round. The Blues have been handed prime time billing in Adelaide.
Carlton and Adelaide will open the inaugural round on the Thursday night at the Adelaide Oval. It's another tick for Carlton as a ratings draw card, the Blues also nabbing Good Friday off the Bulldogs. It means the round won't feature an Adelaide-Port showdown. The AFL will release the full round 5 fixture tomorrow. Hawthorn also expected to play the Giants. The Hawks hosted a legend today. Lee Matthews visiting Waverley, handing over his old number to Jai Newcombe, famously discovered at Box Hill.
Who's going to wear number 3 from now on? You got the moustache. I wish I had your hair. But it's an honour.
7 News can reveal Hawthorn, along with Richmond, Collingwood and West Coast, received about $1.6 million less from the AFL than every other team this year. The AFL docked the 4 clubs $2 million each to create a COVID contingency. In the end, it wasn't needed, but instead of the league giving the money back to the 4 powerhouse clubs, the AFL distributed it evenly to all 18 clubs.
Well, they should, but if you're successful, you get whacked. There are very few clubs now that are financially totally independent of AFL subsidies.
And James Hird won't coach in any assistant capacity next season. Overlooked for the Bombers' senior job, the Essendon legend had a matchday role in the Giants box this year, but will concentrate on his successful business interests. Tom Brown, 7 News.
And tough questions weren't the only issue for Brazil World Cup star Vinicius Jr. at his media conference. While he laughed off the feline intrusion, the team's media manager wasn't so amused, grabbing the cat by the scruff of the neck and throwing it off the table. Thankfully, it was unharmed. Mitch, let's just hope that he's a dog lover.
They shouldn't have been doing that sort of stuff, I don't think, Tim. Not setting a great example there.
No, and great to see Lethal back at Hawthorn today too, that famous number 3 being handed to Jai Newcombe. A little bit of weight on the back, isn't it?
Yeah, well, and Lethal wouldn't have been there for a while.
No, he still looks good though.
Yeah, he does indeed. Thank you, Tim. A new study has debunked the theory that we need to drink 8 cups of water every day. Now we're being told the number of litres changes from person to person, and we should just drink when we're thirsty.
In the struggle to stay hydrated, how much water do we actually need? 8 glasses a day, an oft-heard expression being watered down by new research.
Because I don't meet that. Do you? No, nowhere near.
That nutritional information is from 1945.
More than 90 researchers analysed the water intake of almost 6,000 people, finding the recommended 2 litres a day is actually more than most need.
It's actually quite complicated, and what everyone needs differs according to who you are, your state in life, what you're doing.
Hot and humid climates, altitude, exercise, pregnancy and breastfeeding also require extra H2O, but a lot of the water we need we're already eating.
Zucchini, cucumber, celery, lettuce, all those kind of really water-dense vegetables and fruits.
The best and simplest approach is, if you're thirsty, drink some water. And while you might not need 8 glasses, it's important to stay hydrated, particularly during summer and the upcoming festive celebrations.
You do become dehydrated if you're drinking a lot of alcohol, so it's important to mix them up with some non-alcoholic drinks, which we'd advise anyway.
Amber Laidler, 7 News.
Jane Bunn is next with the forecast. And Jane, when does the warm weather return?
Mitch, it only slowly thaws out tomorrow. But if you're looking for both warmth and sunshine, I have some great news after the break.
Know the headlines as they break. Know the stories as they happen. With 7news.com.au, know the news now.
Hello again on a cold, wet and windy Thursday. It is good to know that warmth and sunshine are not far away. We briefly reached 16 today, 8 degrees below average. But we also had a 16 last December and a 15 in 2019. The coldest December day in Melbourne was a chilly top of 10. We always go up and down in every month of the year. Squally showers overnight brought big falls to eastern suburbs and hardly anything to the west. Monbulk had the top fall with 18 millimetres. Showers continue to stream through this morning with a few more millimetres into the gauge and even the odd bit of wintry hail. It gradually eased during the afternoon, but there are still showers in the outskirts now, and the wind is certainly still making its presence felt. These showers crossed southern Victoria and up onto the ranges, falling as snow, but they dried up as the cold and gusty winds crossed the north. 23 was the warmest we could do today. A cold front brought this current wintry blast, and we now watch the high pressure system to see when the cold winds will stop and the warm ones begin. We need the centre of that high to be out to our east here for the winds to flick northerly. So it remains on the chilly side tomorrow. Not as bitter as today, but certainly not warm yet. Temperatures jump up for Saturday and Sunday as that high is out to our east. By Sunday, it is nearly 10 degrees warmer in Melbourne than what we saw today. Now, I'd certainly make the most of this as the next change rolls through on Sunday, bringing a stormy end to that warmth. And we are certainly not done with the chill. It always goes up and down. We are back to alpine snow on Monday. Around the nation tomorrow, we can see our upcoming burst of warmth as the heat from the north does push down there over the Bight. But it's a skinny wedge, so that tells us the warmth won't last long. Adelaide rises to 26 tomorrow, then 35 on Saturday, while Perth down to 23. Cool to mild through the east on the cool side of the high. To Victoria, showers continue in the far east, while grey skies cover the south with early drizzle. Now in the north, the cool air is offset by warm sunshine, and that sunshine should gradually reappear in the south during the afternoon. Closer in, we are covered in grey sky tomorrow morning, making it cool, even a bit of drizzle under that. But sunshine slowly returns during the afternoon, so it's cool in the shade, a bit more pleasant in the sun by about 3 or 4 p.m. The city has a grey morning before sunshine returns early to mid-afternoon. Then it'll rise up to 18, but with light winds and clear skies tomorrow night, once that sun goes down, it certainly is chilly out there. To the 8-day outlook, we have the top of the roller coaster across the weekend. On Saturday, I'm expecting 26 and a light northerly wind, bright sunshine. On Sunday, I expect 29. The risk of a light shower in the afternoon, the risk of thunderstorms as we go into the evening, and that's the next cold change. So 17 on Monday, lots of showers, a bit of a break Tuesday, then chilly conditions for the rest of the week. Cold and grey tomorrow morning, sunshine returns in the afternoon, rises to 18. The weekend is warm, so it's actually good timing once again, Mitch.
Yes, it is. A 29 and a 16 on the outlook.
Yeah, that's what we do, up and down.
It's quite all right, isn't it?
Thanks, Mitch. Tomorrow on Sunrise, the world reacts to the Harry and Meghan story.
We unpack every bombshell, every shocking revelation and what it means for the royal family.
Plus, Meghan's sister Samantha Markle joins us live with her take, her only TV interview. See you in the morning, Melbourne.
Or you can buckle up if you like. That's the way it is this Thursday, the 8th of December. Thanks for your company. For now, from the 7 News team, good night.